Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me. I'm Flora speaking out as usual. And my mind is going back to about 80 years when I had my first personal experience of a mansion. I like to take then walks with my twin dogs, or maybe you could say they took me for a walk. And I discovered I was in my teens, a few blocks away, easy walking distance, there was a huge abandoned estate. House and grounds, about 24 acres. They had a stable, carriage house, gazebo, greenhouse, and of all things, on the third floor, there was a huge ballroom. Quite weird in that neighborhood, incongruous really. Houses, ordinary houses, and then this enormous mansion. Well, I would go over with my dogs and explore the place. It was totally unsupervised. I never saw anyone there. Looking back, it seems a bit odd that I would go alone, a girl, to a huge abandoned estate. Never saw any tramps, but there could have been. But, though I don't, the old days are the good old days, mostly they were pretty bad. But one good thing about 80, 90 years ago, people generally felt safer. No one thought a thing of me walking home from after the libraries closed, after dark, 10 o'clock at night, walking 2 miles. People generally didn't lock their doors. It seems incredible now. I'm not talking about the big cities, but the small towns, or ordinary towns, not all that small. People generally felt pretty safe, and the schools, of course, were safe. So that was one thing I miss. Anyway, I would explore this house, and an odd thing happened once my last wandering around, even up to look at the ballroom. Right at the front hall, palatial front hall, beautifully curved stairway carved out of oak. That last visit, my twin dogs refused to go up those stairs. No pulling, no urging, no commands made a difference. They crouched on the floor whimpering, wouldn't go past a certain point. They were certainly either seeing or aware of something that I was not. Interesting, an interesting sign. Anyway, later on I looked up this old mansion, haven't seen it, 80 years. Looked it up not long ago, found it had been eventually almost torn down by the city, then sort of passed from hand to hand, one business after another. A library for a while. It still stands, but not for its original use as a fashionable family estate. The man who built it was a self-made, wealthy manufacturer. He finished the house in 1918, the year the First World War ended, and died in that same year of that terrible flu. And the family moved out. No one ever danced in that gorgeous ballroom. He was making a statement. I wonder at the pathos of his never being able to enjoy it. My mind wandered then, of course, or maybe wandered's not the right word, leaped to our president and Trump's obsession with his ballroom after he tore down the East Wing without congressional permission, and is now in the process, it stalled temporarily legally, but is now in the process of building an enormous 90,000 square feet ballroom that can hold 1,000 people. And he keeps talking about it. I think he dragged King Charles over to see every inch of his plans. He refers to this ballroom, and I quote, a shed for an expanded bunker 5 stories down, which would be a long-term living place with a bomb shelter, a hospital, and top secret military installments. One wonders why he feels he needs that kind of bunker down below where he could hold up for who knows how long. And he had said originally, this won't cost the government money a dime. He was going to pay for it and his wealthy donors. But recently, and of course you've all heard, he's asked Congress for $400 million to finish this strange, grandiose, meaningless project. Unless he has a meaning he hasn't explained to us. And only 28% of the nation approve. He also wants to build a triumphal arch many feet higher than the Capitol, the Congress, Lincoln Memorial, for which he's asking $15 million. Only 21% of the nation approves of this expenditure, or this arch. What he's asking is 5 times the annual budget for the national park system. No consultation with experts or historic preservation groups. When we think of how he wants to mess around Washington, D.C., oh, I made a mistake. 15 million for the arch, 10 billion altogether for messing around with monuments that he wants to put all over the city. That's what's 5 times the budget for the national park, 10 billion altogether. Okay, I'm thinking of, and I wish I remembered the name of the historian. I heard this quoted years ago and it's haunted me ever since. When nations begin to concentrate on huge, grandiose buildings and monuments, with that a major focus, it usually means, and I quote, the virtue has gone out of it. A virtue meaning, in the old sense, the unique inner creative fire on, or going anyway, for the sake of outer display, making a statement, and that horrible fashion remark, the inner rot begins. Of ancient Rome, when Augustus destroyed the republic, which Rome had been for centuries, became first the dictator and then the emperor, their first emperor. He boasted he found Rome, the city of Rome, a city of bricks, but left it a city of marble. And within a generation of his death, Rome, at which reached the zenith of its power, it began its long, slow decline, more and more dependent on the labor of slaves. Greater and greater the difference between the rich and the poor. Increasingly, citizens losing their sense of responsibility and significance. He built his other emperors after him built many triumphal arches, glorifying their conquering of other nations, not realizing the rot had begun. I thought of Napoleon. who built his Arch of Triumph, celebrating his ceaseless, bloody wars all over Europe. He built his Arch of Triumph exactly 10 years before his power was definitely destroyed at the Battle of Waterloo. I thought of Hitler, of course, up in the Alps, way high in the Alps at Berchtesgaden, the luxurious chalets for himself and his Nazi entourage. At an enclave, a Nazi enclave, and beneath were bunkers, air raid shelters, command centers. Mussolini, who demolished much of medieval Rome to build enormous marble monuments to celebrate his victories over Libya, Albania, and Ethiopia. And his favorite motto, many enemies, much honor. These grandiose buildings went up. Myself, as I reflected on this, uneasy about some of our own monuments. It's no secret that both the White House and the Capitol building were mostly built by slaves who didn't receive working from sunrise to sunset, sleeping there on the tents ground, a dime of pay for their work. The owners were paid, for the government rented these slaves from owners, White House and Capitol. And the inner rot of the long period of slavery was slowly eating away at our nation, leading to the Civil War, which nearly destroyed us. I think also of, and I'm sorry to say this, Mount Rushmore, which is an amazing thing to see. 60 feet sculptures of 4 presidents. I wish it was just 3. I don't know why they stuck Teddy Roosevelt in there. He did some good things, but he was himself pretty much of a warmonger. That was begun 1927, finished in 1941, right through the period of the Great Depression, using up $91 million while people were starving, literally starving in the streets or killing themselves, losing all their savings overnight. Right through the Depression, which also, more than people realize, almost destroyed us. That land had been stolen from the Lakota Native Americans. It was sacred ancestral grounds for them. And it was taken away and the Indian residents displaced. It didn't help matters when I learned in some research that Borglum, the sculptor himself, was a noted white supremacist and was deeply involved, if not an actual member, with the Ku Klux Klan. That was so prominent during that time. And as I reflected the times of the rot beginning in other nations and ours, I thought of that very famous poem, you probably learned it in high school, written by Shelley, just 3 years after the Waterloo battle that destroyed Napoleon. And I'll just read part of this poem, beginning in the end. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. And on the pedestal, these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains around the decay of that colossal wreck. Boundless and bare, the land and lone and level sands stretch far away. The meaninglessness. Some monuments are meaningful. The Lincoln Memorial, for example, in honor of the president who freed 4 million slaves. I'm thinking of the Statue of Liberty, too, of course. And the gift of love, it was from France. And how that inscription on its base, and I've often read it, contrasts a destructive memorial built out of violation of rights and greed and warmongering, the great colossus of Rhodes, centuries and centuries ago, that stood with its feet on 2 great, commanding. And you remember this poem goes, and I've read it before, just the first part. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, and her name, Mother of Exiles, from her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Some monuments built on joy, creativity, built on the love of the people and the longing of the people for it, not build it on the violation of human rights, not built upon the waste of resources and cruelty. I stand by what I said last week. I think, feel, and there's evidence, we have crossed that continental divide. Many ugly things are going on and will still go on. But I sense, as I said then, a great shift. Only a tiny percent of the nation approves of these grandiose fingerprints and footprints of Trump. More and more of his own party are getting angry and suspicious of him. I sense a new uprising, a deeper longing, a cleansing going on. And I thank you for being with me, thinking along with me, and I feel I'm growing and learning and give thanks that I'm alive to give witness. See you next week.